Welcome back to the She Suite, the podcast where we create a space for women to lead fully, intentionally, and in alignment with who they are, not who they are expected to be. Today's conversation is about leadership that is grounded, leadership that is steady, and leadership that allows room for faith, reflection, and values without forcing a single belief system. I am so honored today to have co founder of Ramley Partners, Ryan Graham. She is a certified leadership coach, connection growth strategist, entrepreneur with 20 plus years of experience building people and businesses, and she's the co-founder of a corporate coaching firm focused on alignment and purpose. But beside all of that, she's still a speaker, a mentor, a wife, a mother, and an endurance athlete. So admire that so much. Ryan Graham leads from a place of clarity, discipline, and deep grounding. And while her faith anchors her leadership, the tools she shares are all universal. So,
Mm.
Ryan, welcome to the She Suite. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you, Sierra. It's such an honor to be here, truly. And just love being connected to women and strong women that are encouraging each and every day, whether we see each other or whether we just find each other on social media and hear the post, read the post, and experience just your insight and your wisdom. So thank you.
Absolutely. So I know I kind of know you from our journey of speaking together before and then now following each other on our LinkedIn journeys. But before we dive in, can you tell our audience who you are, the work that you do, and how your leadership journey has evolved?
Yes, that's a great question. Leadership is such an interesting thing. I think we have a pathway of how it should look and then a pathway of how it actually looks, and it's messy in the middle, right? So, what I love to say is that we can always lead people with what we've improved in our own lives. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to say that we can come from ashes, right? Beauty from ashes. And so I love using that kind of, analogy in my own life as well. Like you shared, I'm a mom. I'm also a wife, and I've had multiple businesses. I've been a serial entrepreneur, which has been really exciting. And also scary. So, what I love most is that I feel like I've been surrounded by incredible people and I've had incredible support from my family and my friends, which has created just the excitement and continuing and just having that resilience and the capacity to continue to do it all day, every day. So, opened up a business or started a business in 2023 with a business partner, Christy Swint. Found each other by way of working on another coaching certification program for a coach here in Birmingham. And it was such a great experience. We did not know each other, but knew each other because all of our businesses have been about 6 degrees of separation from one another. And so, what I love is that when we came together, it was almost like our experiences in life had been very similar in business. And so, what I did well, she didn't love, and vice versa. And just the creativity has been amazing. So, what we do now is go inside businesses. We believe that the core values of any organization are truly the anchor of the organization, and alignment is the engine that runs it. We have a high value for the people inside the organization because without them, the bottom line has no impact, right? And so I truly believe that your people are the greatest people inside the organization. And so what we want to do is help if there's disconnect, help if there's team misalignment, help if there is generational, miscommunication, if you will. Even if there has been, a family run business that has been passed down generation to generation and it's just been done a certain way. How do we actually create some kind of succession plan so that you can walk away and there's still this, if you will, connective tissue? I've been in the wellness industry, so I love using that connective tissue that still carries on what the foundation was founded on. So that's really what we love to do now is really just get inside the organization, figure out the heartbeat, and then help the organization to run on its tracks with really strong boundaries and alignment.
You're speaking my love language when you say human development because as an HR junkie, of course, I am all about that human connection and leading with the human first. That is just so important. I am totally a fangirl over the work that you guys are doing and think you
Thank
guys are doing an amazing job.
Thank
So,
you. I believe that in the work that you're doing. When you named everything the human algorithm, I literally fell on my face and I thought, this is amazing. The one thing that I love and what you said, Sierra, is we cannot separate ourselves personally and professionally. And so, how do we continue to show up in that space and be who we are personally and professionally? And so, it's just a beautiful thing for people to be able to see people for who they are, period, not their role and responsibility.
poetry, pure poetry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, love that, love it. And I can see us we're gonna do a lot of things together in the future, I know we are.
Can't wait. I can't wait.
So let's just kind of get into the conversation. When you think about leadership today, what does it mean to be grounded, especially when it comes to women?
So I think when you think about being grounded as a leader, it just truly means being aligned with who and what you say you are. And we talk about core values in organizations. What are our core values? Oftentimes, I'll ask my clients, "Have you taken kind of just a look at who and what you are?" Because we know who we are as children. And then we become adults, and it's like we're finding our way, we're finding our way. Well, at 40 or 50, are we still finding our way? Or do we truly know what our heart song is, right? And so I think when we can lead from that place, we can truly stay grounded when we stay aligned with what are those core values and does that align with that? I heard once a speaker and a leader say this, that she was in a position for almost 20 years and she reflected on her core values. And when she reflected on her core values, she was like, I've got to leave this job immediately. It wasn't even a decision. She didn't even think through it. And I think that's the most powerful thing, is that when you can all of a sudden look at who and what you are and say, this no longer aligns with who I am, and you can walk away from something that's been a 20-year span, that's pretty incredible. So, really, just that align.
It's great that you mentioned that because as organizations, as we work in organizations, we're constantly thinking about our company's core values. But how many of us have done the exercise to develop what our own core values? Hey, I have not done that exercise internally. Like so
Right.
that's something to think about.
Yes, I think it's so powerful. Oftentimes people and women will say, well, family, faith, children, just pop three things out. And truly, right, you might love your family. Somebody asked me the other day, "Do I have to put family first?" I was like, "No.
Yeah.
No, you don't." So I think it's just understanding what at your core makes you tick every single day. What were you created? Who were you created to be? Who are you?
Writing this down if you see me looking down to the side. I have a handy dandy notebook. And it's like, okay, Sierra, what are your core values? Because you're right. I always family, faith, mission, and all things. But if I really, really dug deep, I bet you it would probably be something a little bit more, even more personal to my
Yes.
journey where I am today.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I can't wait to hear them. You'll have to report back.
I mean, I'm gonna have to report back, right?
Yes.
So, how do you define grounding in a world that constantly demands more speed, more output, more availability?
So I think about just leadership in general. And when we think about leadership, we think about self awareness, right? So when we have that self awareness, we can have that situational awareness that really keeps us grounded to not jump into the fire or fall into the fire, if you will, and start creating chaos, right? So when you have that grounding in leadership, there's grounding in leadership principles. And I think with self awareness, with integrity, with curiosity, and then with also responsibility, we can step forward with that grounding and knowing who we are, how can we understand this situation better, but also still stay with who we are, right? So we're gaining that situational awareness, if you will, and through curiosity, not I know it all, or I don't know it all, and therefore I need to just follow the other leader. But how do we separate ourselves from what seems to be fast or chaotic or out of control? I think sometimes when we do feel out of control, which means we aren't grounded or we don't have that self awareness, we feel in control of being out of control, and therefore we try to control everything when really everything's just falling around us. And that can be a really scary thing, especially as a leader, because we feel very unstable.
You gave me the visual that I've seen on TikTok of somebody, like, everything is on fire behind them, and they're sitting there eating their
Yes.
lunch at a picnic table in the middle of a park.
Yes.
And sometimes
Yes.
that's exactly what life feels like, especially when you're working in complex organizations, right? Like, you have everything
Yes.
happening around you, and you're trying so hard just to stay grounded and focused, and sometimes it does feel like eating your lunch in the park where everything is just burning down to the ground around you.
Yes, absolutely. I know when I first started coaching with my coach, I mean, it's been well over a decade ago, maybe almost two. But one of the things that we talked about was how do you actually sit there and kind of like a movie reel, just watch it pass you by without wanting to play a role in the actual movie. You know, even if something excites you or even if something makes you angry or, um, makes you tick in a certain direction, how do you just sit there and calm your body in that space and really keep your cool, essentially. So it is that self awareness to have situational awareness of what's happening, but not involve yourself quite yet until you have enough information.
You just brought me to one of my next questions for you. So, what happens to leaders when they lose their center, even if they are still performing extremely well?
So I think if they're performing extremely well and there's no center, it just really depends on um, who's I guess whose priorities they are. Are they your priorities? Are they company's priorities? And how do you as a leader step into who you authentically are, like we talked about earlier, and not just lean into what the role or responsibility is, but also give feedback from your role or responsibility, from your authentic self to start leading in that leadership role. So I think sometimes when we have that check the box kind of day or check the box kind of month, we can often reflect back on that and say, were those all somebody else's ideas? And as a leader, was I just checking the boxes? Or was I actually giving feedback to also utilize the wisdom that I have and to play into the role that I've been assigned to help be the leader that I can in this organization? Or nonprofit, for profit, volunteer, mom, whatever you are. So I think that's really key is just not just walking through, and I say walking quietly to your grave, essentially, just checking the boxes, just really making sure that as a leader, you are doing kind of a look back to see, okay, what did I do this month? What is the feedback that I can receive myself? And how can I give feedback to an organization, to another leader to try to step into some of the wisdom that I have to share and to increase the organization in different ways?
I'm glad you said that because at a person that can tend to lead more on the control freak side of things, and working at organizations, especially working in the staffing industry where things were stressful, right? We had, projects where I had to wait for 300 people to show up and maybe only 150 did that day, whatever the case may
Yes.
be. Um, but then I also realized that sometimes I would try to fix problems that were not mine because I am a fixer by nature. So one of the things that I had to learn how to do was to say, like, not my department, not my problem.
Mhm.
Which I know
Yes.
is probably somewhat a little bit toxic,
Mhm.
but in order to keep me centered and grounded and focused on
Mhm.
what Sierra needed to
Mhm.
focus on and not get drawn in to
Mhm.
helping other people in their problems that were
Mhm.
going to deter me from the things that I needed to do every day, this was something that I had to tell myself. And it sometimes it'd be not my client, not my
Mhm.
problem. Like my client was Hyundai, and Hyundai took a
Mhm.
lot of my energy. But when
Mhm.
things were going awry at Mercedes, that really wasn't my client. And
Mhm.
so when people
Mhm.
would call me, telling me and try to get me to fix things at other client situations, I'm like,
Yes.
you're taking me away from the clients that I really need to be close. So
Yes.
we had to have those conversations and stay grounded. Is an exercise that I still practice at 45 years old, but it's
Mhm.
definitely something that I
Yes. And I'll add to that too. I mean, just presence and discernment and responsibility as a leader are so key because the hustle culture doesn't have patience. And so really just understanding what that looks like for me and other people's priorities become our priorities when we slowly allow it. right? So it's how do you set those boundaries early and often? And that's some of the things that we talk to organizations about is, what boundaries are put in place or how well are you at communicating your boundaries? And I think that's key is are you communicating boundaries and how well are you doing that? And it's not being mean, it's necessary, right?
Absolutely necessary is necessary for my peace because my job was stressful enough, and then taking on other people's stresses was just stressing me out even more. So,
Yes,
yes, when we don't need any more stress, life has enough stress on its own.
that's right.
So are there any specific practices that have helped you stay grounded when life and leadership feel heavy or chaotic? Because you're a mother, a mentor, a business owner, and in marathon, so I can assure you that your life gets chaotic at some point.
Yes, Sarah, I would say life seems chaotic almost every single day if I really were to take like a snapshot picture of it. And I think each of us can say that, like, if we really allowed the chaos to happen, we would probably lie down in our beds and sleep for, hours upon hours and just say, like, I'm done. I think the beautiful thing about that is just understanding in my day what is a priority to me and really keeping the focus on that. I also think that, my faith really grounds me. So every single day, getting up, setting the intention, having my time, my quiet time, whatever that looks like. And you don't have to have belief the same way that I do, but I think the beautiful thing is just having that space and that time to utilize affirmations for yourself. Write down a reflection of yesterday and what you can improve today on yesterday, or do that before you go to bed. And when you wake up in the morning, write the I am, affirmation statements. For me, it really is holding tight to a verse that I might have read in the day, and honestly, I feel like God uses it in my day. Each and every day, I'll be like, okay, this is exactly why I got up and read this. And it could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 45 minutes. So I really think grounding yourself in whatever you have to keep yourself really standing on that strong foundation of, okay, I know what I am at the core of myself, and really just having that responsibility to stay disciplined. And then also knowing when to rest. I think most people don't really take enough pauses and rest in their day. You're just working, 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 head down. And all of a sudden you fall out at the end of the night. And then you're like, what did I even do today? So, what I love to do is anytime that I might have space to just get outside and walk for 5 seconds or take my AirPods out and leave my phone behind, just take time for yourself. And that re energizing, even the sunshine can make a difference in who and what we are in our day. So I think it's encouraging. If it doesn't happen in the morning, find 5 minutes in your day to just take a breather.
You just said a lot, because one, I really truly believe that how you start your day sets the
Mm,
tone. Okay? So if you start your day in chaos, it's going to just be chaotic for the rest of the day.
that's right.
But also carving out that me time is so, so important because for me, I have recently gone on this pure bar journey, which it's still kind of dragging me along, but I'm
I
getting
love
better.
that.
But I schedule my day and I schedule that I am going to take the 8:45 to 9:35 class on at least 3 days out of the week. And I am intentional about that. Everybody on my team knows do not schedule anything around that time. My kids know don't call me. I am unavailable because that is pretty much the only time that I get during the day. By the time I come back, I'm working. Everybody comes home from their day. I'm dealing with that, trying to get dinner on the table, keep the
Hmm.
house clean, do laundry, and do all the other things. That is my hour in my space to do something intentional for me.
Yes.
And I feel like since I started this in October, I feel like I'm myself again because also
Hmm.
through menopause, I've been just going through the motions of all of that as well and not really feeling like myself. So
Yes.
I feel like this intentional movement, number one, which is important, like you said, with getting out and
Mhm.
going outside. And right now, it's too cold to do that for me.
Yes.
But just being intentional with number one, the movement, but then
Mhm.
also doing something for myself. And even though I hate the entire 50-minute class, I really, really do to my core. Um, I always feel better when I leave because I was like, okay, you made it through another class. And
Yes.
also you just feel better. The endorphins start running and it gives me the energy to get through the rest of my day. So thank you
Yes.
for sharing that because I think women put themselves last in a lot of situations and that leads to burnout.
100%. And like you said too, it's that commitment that you have and the discipline to actually follow through. So, we can commit to something every single day, but even if we commit to it, and that's why I say people put it on your calendar, make it a calendar event for yourself. If it's a 5 minute walk, make it a calendar event. So whatever that is for you, squeeze that time in and make it. And like you said, it's that discipline to go even when you don't want to. And then afterwards, it is that feeling that energizes you to continue in your day.
Yes. I love that also, if you don't cancel a class within the 4-hour window at bar, they're gonna charge you anyway.
Yes.
That also makes me be like, "No, I really don't," which
Yes.
has been all the difference for me because, like, a gym, there's no accountability, but that little
Mhm.
charter, and even though it's only $15, that's just been enough accountability for me to make sure that I am being a steward.
Yes, and everything compounds. I mean, like you mentioned, everything compounds in life. So I do feel like when we can look at it that way, it's almost this we raise the standards when it starts compounding, right? So it's like we have the standard and this way of living, and then all of a sudden we raise the standard on that, right? Because the compound becomes bigger and bigger. And as thrivers, it's just so important.
Absolutely. Okay, so my next thing that I want us to talk about is your faith, because your faith clearly informs how you lead. And how do you talk about faith in professional spaces without excluding others?
So, I think what I love most is that my faith is personal to me. And I love my faith journey. It has been expansive, it has been encouraging, it has been all the things, but it hasn't always looked the same. But what I've always been is curious. What I've always been is intrigued with other people. What I've always been is having a strong desire to sit across the table from people that I don't know that walk vastly different lives from me and understand them better. There is never judgment with me because I feel like when we come to the table with pure humility and transparency and honesty, we learn so much. And so while my faith drives me personally, I never impart on others that that is the only way to be and to do. And so just really loving people for who they are, how they show up, how they stand in this world. I think that people always say, all we need is love. And that just goes back to that just simple statement. All we need is love and care and empathy, not sympathy, but empathy for one another. To truly put yourself in their shoes, walk the life that they've walked, have the perspective they've had. Where have they grown up? Who did they eat their most meals around? What formed them? What shaped them? And so, really, that to me is just such a beautiful thing to understand the human inside each of us. And when I look at even the Bible and my faith, Jesus walked around with the individuals that weren't believers either. And I think
Mhm.
that's the most beautiful thing is that's what we should do. We are all humans making human decisions, and I think that is, that's where I stand on all the faith and my personal journey.
And I think that also that need to constantly learn from other humans is such a great skill because um, it allows you to have that true human connection and that bond. And I lead in the same way. I am definitely grounded in my faith. I know who I am, a woman of faith, but I can appreciate people that have different faiths than mine. I appreciate learning. And it was funny because the other day I was at dinner with our leaders in our subdivision. We go out to dinner once a month. And something happened at dinner. And I think I said Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. And so the lady across from me, she goes, "Oh, are you Catholic?" I'm like, "No," but one of my best friends is Catholic, so I have kind of adopted some of their things into my
Yes.
out of nowhere. So
Right.
we just thought that was so funny. I was like, sometimes I do the cross, you just never know, but I just think all faith is beautiful, and I've just kind of probably meshed it into
Mm,
my own. But she just
yes.
thought that was so funny, and I was like, "No, I have friends that are Catholic," so that's kind of where I've adopted that from.
Yes, I have learned so much, and I think that as a runner too, we have a lot of pavement talk, is what we say. But I run with a lot of different individuals that have a lot of different religions, and I think that's beautiful too is it has taught me, in that pavement talk, we can have so many conversations about, how they grew up, what shaped them, what even in their religion, what it looks like to be, just um, what is it called? Very a devout, whatever religion is, just very devout in their religion in a certain way. And so understanding that too has been really cool to me because, we have one perspective from, probably how we grew up or what we read. And so just understanding is such a powerful tool. And you said that deep connection with individuals is just the breath of life.
That gives your brain the opportunity to just soak in so much.
Yes.
So, what does it look like to lead with conviction while still honoring diversity of belief?
So I think and tell me a little bit more when you're asking about conviction with honoring my belief, just stepping forward in who I am with a conviction to do my best is what you're asking. So, you know,
Yes.
I think while I'm honoring my own belief, I can step forward as a human being, just having my perspectives and my alignment and my values as the center. And I think when we can have that, we have a conviction to step forward with our very best foot, right? To do our very best each and every day, to show up in who I say I am, not just what I say I am and what's on paper. And so regardless of my faith, I don't really shine it up on a back wall. It's just how do I shine who Ryan is at her heart and her soul and have integrity with every single thing that I do, because that to me says more than anything.
Yes, and I have loved watching your journey, even though it's been kind of sort of from afar on LinkedIn, but just seeing how you show up as a leader, as a
Thank you.
mom, as a runner, I definitely think it holds true to exactly who you are. So if I had never ever met you in person, I still think I would be intrigued by your story just because you show up as your human, authentic self in all
Mhm.
spaces that. So I can greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, Sarah. I think it's really important, and I've shared this with a lot of people, just storytelling. I'm a
Mhm.
human, I make mistakes, and I think we have to remind ourselves of that as leaders. Being very vulnerable in a leadership space doesn't show weakness. What it actually shows is that I'm human and I actually make mistakes every single day and I can ask for forgiveness and grace in so many different ways. And also have high expectations that that I can give the same to others. Right. And so I think that when we show ourselves in a vulnerable space like that, it also says I'm human. And I hope that when you show up, you show up as human as well. And, we can have strong leadership principles, but at the same time, still make mistakes every day.
Absolutely. And I am finding that LinkedIn is becoming more and more accepting of being a space for that, right? Because
Yes.
I think when LinkedIn first came about, it was all about, "Look at me. This is what I did. This is the award. This is the degree, the achievement I've moved up in my organization." But now you're starting to see more people really talk about what it looks like to just live their day-to-day lives and be a leader that is human. And that, yes, I led my team down this path and it was a huge mistake, but this is what I learned from that mistake. Or
Yes.
I started this job with this company, the culture sucked, I left after 2 months, but this is what I learned from that experience. So I appreciate and I find myself wanting to connect and follow more leaders like you, and like others that are just showing what real authentic leadership looks like.
Yes, 100%. I mean, I think that oftentimes we think those executive level positions are so closed off when in reality, some of them really are not. And I think when we can pursue them in a way, I think you can see more vulnerability start showing. And I love what I'm seeing on LinkedIn. I got off LinkedIn for years because of that very fact. There was just so much like, look at me, look at the accolades, and that's great and wonderful. We all need to be recognized. We really do. And also, it's great also to be very transparent and, okay, at my very worst, this is what it felt like. This is what it looked like.
That. And I think that's a great segue into some of my next questions because I want to talk about burnout, identity, and boundaries, right? Especially for women who kind of start to feel pressure and self abandonment the further up they go up in their organizations. So, what are often praised? Women are often praised for being adaptable, but at what cost? What are you kind of seeing as someone who works within these organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but adaptability does come at a cost. And I think when other people's priorities become our priorities, we start falling off our leadership ladder, if you will. And honestly, it's because we have proven ourselves to be in a certain leadership position, so to speak. Maybe we've clawed our way to the top, or maybe, we've slowly gotten there, whatever it looks like for each individual. But when we start adapting, what happens is we also start losing some boundaries. And when we lose those boundaries, we lose who we are authentically to ourselves in that leadership position. And therefore, we're being led by somebody else and not necessarily leading anyone behind us. And so I think that the key here is really understanding and just having discernment and delineating between what is a priority for me and this organization, and then also what is a priority for the person leading me. And how can we create some kind of feedback system, not just performance review, so that we can obviously see what is the best way for me to start leading in a way that's truly authentic to myself and what I was hired to do in this role and in this responsibility. Because adaptability, like I said, the cost is that others' priorities start bleeding us out seriously. So,
I am finding that out now as I am leading my team and trying to take this veteran network across the state. One of my team members lives in Mobile, and we just had dinner the other night. And I was like, you've been in your role for 6 months now. So, kind of, what are some thoughts? What are some things that you need help with? And how can I help you
mm,
in your role? And he was like, I've never had anybody ask me that.
that's a great
Let me
question.
just kind of think about that and then get back to you. He was like, I'm just really gonna have to figure that out. I was like, well, this is it's a team effort
Hmm.
and having to adapt because the way that veterans operate here in Huntsville is
Hmm.
the same way they operate in Birmingham or
Hmm.
Montgomery or Mobile. So having to learn different systems, it's something that, I am definitely going through this whole adaptability phase of my own life right now and learning
Yes.
how do I scale this exact same program in Mobile and still make it successful. So I think adaptability is, something that is a gift to a lot of women, but it's also to our detriment because we are so adaptable with giving birth and then having to then take
Hmm.
care of the child and an entire family and then going back to work while still having newborns and like our life is just full of adaptability and situations that make us adapt whether we want to or not um,
Yes.
but I think inside of the organization we have to be careful because we're just so
Mhm.
eager to adapt and conform and to lead, but I think it's really truly causing us a lot of burnout
Mhm.
emotionally and intentionally.
Yes. And you said something that made me think about this. I mean, oftentimes we'll say, we can do a lot of things with our hands tied behind our backs as women, and we really can. But can we? But should we? Right. And I think that's the bigger question is, our choice is we can adapt and we can be flexible, but and we might break eventually, right?
Mhm.
But at what cost? And that is just because we can do so much and we can handle so much. So,
Absolutely. So where do you see women most often abandoning themselves in leadership?
usually in leadership, I see they feel like they're underqualified. They might be working their way up or being promoted to a leadership position, and then just that fear sets in. Honestly, just I have 5 qualifications, but I don't have 8 qualifications. Am I actually good in this position to lead? I also see that sometimes leaders feel like they've got to have every single skill set in their position. What I find most is when leaders can actually utilize the people that are working with them. That's called collaboration. That's called connection. We don't have to have every skill set in leadership. We just have to be able to lead and then also know when we are have a non-strength. I don't call it a weakness, but a non-strength where we can
Mhm.
utilize other people, other individuals to collaborate, connect with. And so I do see people falling off when they say, I'm not qualified enough or I'm underqualified here. That's probably the most with leadership that I see.
You are saying exactly what one of our first guests that was a recruiter in the
Really?
space was talking about how women automatically disqualify themselves because we cannot check off every single box on the job
Yes.
description, where men are like, yeah, I kind of did that, or I can figure that out. They're just more apt to just go all in where we're and thinking about the ways that we might fail, where they're
Mhm.
just like, if I fail, I'll fix it.
Yes.
So I think that is great knowledge, and in my own leadership journey, to be promoted or got, recruited from another organization to do something that might not have been in my comfort zone. But then
Mhm.
I had to have that self-talk of, if they see this in me, why don't I see that in myself? So
Right.
talking yourself through those different modes of life.
Yes. And I think too, as women, sometimes, especially in leaders, strong women leaders, that we feel like we have to know it all, right? We have to have it all together. We have to know it all before we step forward. And I'm the leader that likes to say, okay, I'd rather just step forward and figure it out. Give me a deadline and I'll figure it out. Because I feel like when we are recognized, like you said, as that leader in that position, someone sees it in it before we see it in ourselves, and obviously they know we have capacity and we have wisdom to figure it out. And so it is just trusting that very thing to step forward, even without knowing what the end result actually was going to look like.
Like, so how do women discern between being called to stretch and being called to reset? Because that's definitely two different things.
Yes, I think, I said this earlier too, Sierra, is just I feel like we all reach a certain capacity where we're done, right? We're done and we're undone. And so I do think that there is margin for that to stretch. And I think there's also time to reset. When we lose clarity in anything that we're doing, that to me calls for a reset. And it might not be extreme, but it might just be a minute. I need clarity on this. We're all built to be creatives, right? We were made to be creatives. We all have something innately inside of us to do and that we're good at. And so, in simple terms, if we can just pause for a minute to kind of recreate that fire inside of us, how does that help us to stretch even further? I think about sometimes if we take one of those like slingshots and we pull back, well, our grip might not be good enough, but if we get our grip really firm and we're pulling back further, it gives us a little bit margin to release and for the slingshot shot to go further. So when I think about that, how much of a grip can we get on ourselves internally and our core values so that when we understand that and we align that, our leadership ladder starts going up because there's such clarity. And when there's clarity like that, it's just everything flows better. And so that to me helps us to stretch further and faster. And I think that we really you need to utilize that communication with others. Hey, I hear what you're saying, and I hear that you're calling me in to stretch. What I want to ask you is if you'll give me a day or so. I just need a minute to pause, to reset, to kind of recalibrate some things. And then I really feel like I might come back with some ideas for us to make this, better than even what's at the table now. So it gives us opportunity, even as leaders, to say, this is what I need right now in order to be my best.
Let's talk about that for a minute because I think permission to pause is something that is so important. And because we're in such uh, right now society where we have access to the internet, now we have ChatGPT that's helping everybody figure out their life.
Right.
So, uh, talk about it, giving yourself permission to pause. Kind of go a little bit deeper into that.
Yes, I think the big thing is that it is we talked about this, a hustle culture, right? It's go, 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 go. Our children, I mean, if anyone has any children they're listening to this, you understand, you can see it in your own children. It's the next thing. I mean, even watching those short videos, 3 minutes, 2 minutes, their attention span has gotten tighter and tighter. I mean, just all the things that our kids are inundated with. So when we think about that, our world has gotten faster, everything's gotten faster. I feel like we don't even need permission to ask for that. It's our duty to ourselves to really stay just at our core, who and what we are, refreshed in the soul. The only way for us to stay in our own presence, fully self aware, is by staying completely calm in our body, right? Because think about this, when I always say, when cooks in the kitchen have something catastrophic happen, if they weren't remaining calm, then every meal would be ruined. I mean, I've seen pictures of, like, the fire's going up, the water's boiling over. I mean, that's exactly what happens in our lives. And so how do we create that and calm is we let someone know. We don't ask for permission. Hey, this is what I'm experiencing and I just need a minute, or I need a day. I need to take a mental health day. I need to take a pause in my day. I need 30 minutes. And I think when we ask that, if somebody values the person that we are in our position, they will also value the needs of who we are as a human being.
As I think back often to the pandemic and how it forced everybody to take a pause and how refreshing it was to actually remember my kids' names, which is something that I joke about all the time because I was traveling so much and I was so busy, and my amazing parents were the second set of parents that were coming in to help me raise them. But during the pandemic, I was like, oh, you guys are amazing little human beings that have your own personalities and
Oh,
all the great things, and being at home with them for that, really about a 6-month time span for me was, amazing, but it allowed me chaotic.
yes.
Um, and then being a part of the Verizon wireless shutdown day before yesterday,
Yes.
although that was a pause that I did not need on a travel day, um, it was nice to not have my phone ringing off destination. Um, It was refreshing, and but then it also reminded me of the pandemic when I was intentional about just to give my mind that opportunity to just take a break and unplug,
Mhm.
and how I was intentional about not grabbing my phone as soon as I wake up to check messages and all of that and lay in bed for 15 minutes and scroll, and, like, it kind of, and don't go
Mhm.
back at this because I still want my $20 credit,
Right.
but it just reminded me of how peaceful life is when I take a walk without myself. So I pay attention to the birds that I've never seen before, or listen to the sounds and see the sun, and, all the things that we take notice of when our face isn't glued to this digital device. So, um,
Yes.
but I think taking pause during the day, because with pause comes clarity, and with clarity comes alignment. And I think that that is just important practices that each of us need to remember during our days.
Yes, I tell that to my coaching clients so often, is find those times. And I mentioned this earlier, find those times in your day just to take a walk, to get out. I will wake up in the morning typically and run. Sometimes I run with friends. Sometimes I run by myself. Sometimes I listen to podcasts. Sometimes I just run on the path and try to, like you said, hear all the things, look at the ground, watch the animals, speak to every person that passes me, make that connection, that eye contact. I will tell you, 2 out of 10 people will look up and make eye contact because they're so into their podcast. They're so into what they're doing. They're looking their head down. We are such a disconnected world. I feel like it's getting better, but we are such a disconnected world, and that has just been so eye-opening to me. Even when I have my AirPods in, just even in speaking and engaging and kind of taking in the people in front of me.
Yes, I love that. And back when my fiance was getting ready to run his marathon, I was going running and walking with him until he got to like the past 5 miles. And after that, I was like, just go on your own and I'll walk on.
Done. Yes.
Um, But I do remember I love music, so music grounds me, it centers me, so I always have my music running, majority of the time, but w I always wanted to make eye contact with think that's important, and I think it lets them know that they were seen at some point that day, that
Yes.
somebody saw them throughout the day, because I think that you're right, we're just so disconnected,
Mhm.
and that just eye contact is amazing when it's intentional.
Yes, 100%.
So your background is rooted in communication and human behavior. So
Mm.
why is connection foundational to leadership? Since we're talking about eye contact.
Yes, connection is everything to me. I mean, I feel like when we are deeply connected with those around us, like I said, we can pull from what we might have, which is a strength, and then a non strength, utilize the people around us. There is no I in team, right? And so I think that when we can utilize that and really lift each other up as a whole, we become better as a society because we're deeply connected with individuals. I think when we think about organizations and connection, most of the time we put people in their roles and we aren't understanding who they are. If you hear the statement, it's not personal, it's just business, um, how does that make you feel? You know, and I think that's a question we ask a lot because how do you mix personal and business and do it the right way where it's not you're taking up somebody's, all afternoon to tell them about a story and get feedback on them. That's a time for after hours. But how do you connect with somebody so you really know the things they love? What makes them tick? If it's a hello in the morning, I love for people to speak to me. Like you just said, I love music. Okay, music, let's go out and let's dive a little bit deeper. What kind of music? Maybe I like music too. Maybe we want to go, see something after hours. So I think people also go to work all day and they're working all day and then they feel like they don't have this work life balance, but it's because they're not deeply connected to the people inside their organization. Typically, they're doing their work, their heads down. They maybe have interacted a little bit with workload, responsibilities, but not with personal connection. And so is it a once a week lunch with someone or even a Zoom lunch with someone for 20 minutes just to catch up with them? Maybe you don't know them in your office. So that type of connection to me just creates a healthier organization and it creates healthier communities because it expands outside the four walls of your organization.
So I literally just had lunch yesterday with two of my coworkers from a company that I worked with 4 years ago. Um, and so you are so right when you're talking about, you know, first of all, work life balance is non-existent, really. But if I am spending the majority of my time in my day with people, I'm gonna want to get to know them, but eventually I'm gonna love them just like I love family. And so my two coworkers, shout out to Barbara and Joel, my old owning crew. I was
I love
in my
that.
group yesterday for like 12 hours and I was like, hey, and it was a last minute Hail Mary of I've got a free block. Please let me know if you guys are able to meet us at our spot that we always go to for lunch so we can catch up. None of us have been together since we all went our separate ways.
Wow.
Um, so it was so good to and I mean, we call each other and talk to each other and
Hmm.
check on each other often, but it was just nice to be all together and back in our old space, talking about the old trouble that we used to get into and all
Yes.
the things. But I literally left just almost feeling refreshed and recharged because I
Hmm.
had that face-to-face interaction with two people that I absolutely adore that I would have never met had I not worked for a company. So,
Yes. Yes.
yeah, human
That's
connection is
amazing.
so important.
Yes, and I think even like you said, it's that Hail Mary, the last minute decisions to go grab lunch or go grab coffee or to take a walk outside your office are
Yes.
usually the ones that work best. So,
Yep.
always ask, like make the conversation in order to do it. I mean, I think it's very important.
Yes, because I think one of them even mentioned yesterday, like, had we had really planned this out and put
Mhm.
this this wouldn't have happened. Like,
That's right.
I'm glad that you just reached out and was just like, it all worked out. So, um That leads me into the human algorithm moment of our conversation. So let's talk a little bit about empathy. So, how does empathy help women lead without carrying everyone else's emotional?
Yeah. So, I was thinking about this the other day, Sierra, that when I was growing up, we use the word sympathy a lot. And I really do feel like empathy has become a new word that we're using often. And I love it because we can have feeling for someone, we have sympathy for someone, right? But when we have empathy for someone, we have understanding. We can put ourselves in their shoes. We can walk in their shoes, and I think when we can have empathy in our positions and also be a leader, it's like we've got empathy, but we have business acumen all at the same time. That is a beautiful, perfect storm that creates expansion and thriving. And I feel like as a human being, when we can have empathy, we can pause in our day, sit across from somebody and say, listen, I saw how you reacted at something someone said in a meeting this morning. And I was just curious. I wanted to hear a little bit more. And maybe that was just my own perspective, but I want to hear a little bit more. Did it disappoint you? Were you angry? As a leader, I think it's important when we can have empathy because maybe this individual had an experience that just brought something back up, or maybe this individual has been having challenges inside the workplace that nobody's hearing her or him about, right? And so I think when we have empathy, we can have situational awareness to recognize and then to also say, how can I or how can I, or what can I, or I saw you experience this or that. I also believe too, just even having empathy towards the human being. You talk about a human algorithm when you're coming inside an office setting and your mom's sick or your child is experiencing some really hardship in school. So when you know that as a leader and you have an employee stepping into your office space, or you're a CEO and you have an employee or leader stepping into the office space, how do you address that as a human being? Hey, Sierra, I know you're experiencing, XYZ. I don't need to know any other information, but I just want you to hear me that if you need to take a day or two, please know that I see you, I value you as a human, and I want you to know that that break would probably mean more to you than you spinning your wheels here and trying to make it work when you've got so many other things in your head spinning around. So I think that too, as a leader, says a lot about I want you to stay here in the organization and you have a high value here. And if you need to go work from home for a day or two and deal with things, then you do it. And I think that's important.
A leader show up for you in that way is something that I have carried with me for a while because unfortunately I have worked in roles where a lot of times my leaders were women that for some reason forgot what it was like to be another woman that had young kids,
Mhm.
had the doctor's appointments, the pediatrician appointments, and the things that go on during the day because they're not open on Saturdays and Sundays or
That's
after.
right.
Um, and then when I had one of my first male leaders, my son had an appointment. It's like maybe a dentist appointment or something. And he literally looked at me and was like, hey, I'm not going to. And I had this anxiety about telling him that I was not going to be able to be on this leadership call because I had to do this appointment. And I think he could kind of feel that in our conversation. And he was like, you need to be with your son. Go
Mhm.
take him to the appointment. He was like, just, I'm going to go ahead and just block your calendar off for a half day that day so that you can go get breakfast with him, hang out with him for a little bit, go to the appointment, take your time, and then come back to work. Like, it's not a big deal. And I just feel like you're just so worked up about asking me this when you shouldn't be. I was like, "Huh, this is refreshing," but it also caught me off guard because that had never happened before because a lot of
Yes.
times mom have mom guilt because of our past lived experiences. So, having a leader that shows up for you in that way
Mhm.
and sees you for more than the dollar value that you bring to the
Right. Right.
it is so important, and I just don't think that we see it enough.
I totally agree. I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole of cultures and toxic cultures and all the things. And I think it's important. You cannot pretend culture, right? And when you do have that leadership that leads with one business acumen and empathy, I feel like organizations are stronger because their people are valued. And they know the value. They're believed that they're coming inside that organization with a conviction to do their best every single day and to show up. And I don't believe that anyone would not have a conviction to do their best if they have engaged in this organization, unless they're looking for another job. But in that case, I do feel like, with that, how do we as leaders continue to recognize that and also say, okay, I'm going to have empathy towards this individual. It is frustrating. We're in the middle of a project, but if I give them some margin, I wonder what they could accomplish. And we know as women what we can accomplish even away from an office in a 2 hour window versus in an office in an 8 hour.
So, what is one piece of advice that you would give to a woman who feels spiritually, emotionally, or mentally depleted? Because I think that's a lot of women these days.
Yes. That's such a hard space to be in, honestly. And when you feel that way, you do feel like you are just walking like a robot in your day. It feels chaotic. It feels unorganized. It feels like balls are dropping around. Like you said, you're sitting at the picnic table and flames are up behind you, and you're about wondering when they're going to actually hit you. Um, or even somebody gave me an analogy the other day. If you are ever in an ocean, you get caught by a wave and the wave keeps spinning and you're just tumbling in the wave. That's exactly what that feels like. And so to me, it's how do you reset that? I say 5 minutes, 5 minutes spiritually in your day to find that grounding. Right. And 5 minutes when you connect one with who and what you are, that realigns you and your purpose. And then you do it the next day. And then you do it the next day. So it truly is, how am I going to commit to myself and have that accountability to self, to have the discipline to do it each and every day, and to wake up and to do it again, and to wake up and to do it again until I know that the standard there is an expectation that I will never let go of again, right? Because I know what it feels like to be at the lowest of low. And I can tell you that rock bottom is overrated. And each of us can reach a rock bottom, but it doesn't have to be the lowest of the low. So, whatever your rock bottom is, if that's now, if that's today, then I say slowly climb your way out. Find either that podcast on your way home that you can listen to. Find the 5 minutes before you get out of bed just to give gratitude before you put your feet on the floor. And that can start slowly. I remember when I first started this, because I do feel like it was very chaotic when I had little kids and I had a business, and it was stressful. It was overwhelming some days. I remember saying to myself, I'm just going to give gratitude before I get out of the bed every morning. And I started doing that. And now it's like now I'm 5 to 10 minutes in giving gratitude and saying prayers before I even open my eyes. And I think that is, now the standard has been raised. So that to me is very important. And my hope is that everyone will hear this and start really doing this today and having a discipline towards themselves to honor who and what they are so that they can be who and what they are in this world.
That is a beautiful piece of advice, and thank you so much for sharing that. So, as we get ready to close, I have one question that I always ask our guests before we end the segment. So, what is one truth about women in leadership that the world isn't ready to hear, but absolutely?
I think the truth in leadership that in women that the world needs to hear is that women can do just about anything. Women have high responsibility and grounded leadership, and they have presence in this world that I know that most people would not believe the responsibility they can handle the responsibility. So I feel like in this world, when you're handed as a woman the responsibility of something, to fully trust that a woman can and will be successful, and to just back away, to allow the woman to step forward with full trust that they are grounded in who and what they are, and they will prove that they can lead countries, organizations, strong organizations. And I think also collaboration. Women, what most women in leadership do well is collaborate well. It's not a demanding, commanding leadership position, but I feel like most women um, in leadership positions, the world needs to know that we collaborate well, and when we do that, we create this kind of living, breathing organism, if you will, inside an organization that really creates expansion in the world.
Love it. You said everything that we all needed to hear. Ryan, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for showing us that grounded leadership isn't about having all the answers, but about being anchored enough to ask the right questions. This conversation definitely reminds us that leadership doesn't require us to abandon our values, but just to know them and know who we are. Thank you so much for being in the She Suite. I know our listeners are going to love this conversation and probably a conversation that we can all hopefully, we will have the opportunity to meet again soon in person and outside of LinkedIn, but really wanted to thank you for being the guest today.
Thank you so much, Sierra. Such an honor, and I love being on it. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our listeners, and we will see you the next time in the She Suite.